The StarCraft incidents. On August 5, 2005, 28-year-old Lee Sunap walked into an internet cafe in Daegu, South Korea. He ordered a soda, logged into StarCraft, and sat down to play. That part was normal. What followed wasn't. Minutes blurred into hours. Hours quietly turned into days. According to witnesses, Lee barely left his chair, standing up only for quick trips to the bathroom. No real breaks. No real rest. Just game after game. By the second night, he had been glued to the keyboard for nearly 50 straight hours. His body was slumping forward, his eyes red and strained, but his fingers kept moving. The cafe manager eventually stepped in and told him to stop. Lee refused, shook his head, queued up another match, and kept going. At dawn on the third day, it ended without warning. Lee suddenly collapsed at his station. Paramedics arrived quickly, but he was already unresponsive. At the hospital, doctors confirmed what had happened. Cardiac arrest caused by extreme exhaustion, severe dehydration, and blood clots from sitting still for far too long. He was pronounced dead shortly after arriving. No enemies. No final boss. Just one more game taken too far. The Pokemon electrocution on July 9, 2017, in Iloilo City, Philippines. A 12-year-old boy was out with friends doing what millions of kids around the world were doing at the time. Playing Pokemon Go. Phones in hand, eyes on the screen. They drifted closer and closer to a nearby construction site while hunting digital creatures that, unfortunately, did not care where they spawned. The boy holding the phone climbed onto a metal structure positioned uncomfortably close to overhead power lines. According to witnesses, he lost his footing and instinctively reached out to steady himself. Instead of support, his hand met a live electrical cable. There was a sharp crack. Then silence. He collapsed immediately. His friends screamed, drawing the attention of nearby adults who rushed over. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was already too late. The boy showed no signs of life and was pronounced dead at the scene from electrocution. Authorities later confirmed what had gone wrong. He hadn't been reckless for fun, he'd been distracted. Focused on the game, he wandered into an area that was never meant to be entered. The incident made local headlines and was cited among a growing list of Pokemon Go-related deaths worldwide. Cases where players followed what was on their screens straight into real-world danger. Turns out, some hazards don't need augmented reality at all. The Minecraft incident. On July 19, 2015, a 17-year-old boy walked into an internet cafe in Pampanga, Philippines, sat down at a computer, logged into Minecraft, and settled in. What started as a normal gaming session quietly stretched into something far more extreme. According to witnesses, he played almost non-stop for close to 3 days. He didn't go home. He didn't really rest. At most, he took short naps, slumped over the desk, waking up just long enough to keep playing. CAF staff began to worry he hadn't been eating properly and barely left his chair the entire time. By the third day, his body finally gave up. As he leaned forward to type, he suddenly went limp and collapsed onto the keyboard. He never got back up. Friends shouted for help. Staff rushed over and tried first aid while calling emergency services. Paramedics arrived quickly, but there was nothing they could do. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Doctors later determined the cause was cardiac failure, triggered by extreme exhaustion and severe dehydration after prolonged, continuous gaming. No monsters, no lava, just real-world limits ignored until they hit back. The Call of Duty swatting. On December 28, 2017, a stupid online argument over a Call of Duty match spiraled into something irreversible. 2 players in the United States had clashed over a $150 wager. Words were exchanged. Egos flared, and instead of logging off, one of them decided to escalate it into the real world. Casey Viner pushed another player, Tyler Bear, to swat their opponent, a malicious prank that involves calling police with a fake emergency to trigger an armed response. Barrises picked up the phone, dialed 911 from Los Angeles, and reported a fabricated hostage situation in Wichita, Kansas. The address he gave wasn't even the rival's. It belonged to 28-year-old Andrew Finch, a man completely uninvolved in the argument. The game, or the people behind the call. Police swarmed Finch's home. Officers surrounded the house and ordered him to come outside with his hands raised. Finch opened the door, confused and unaware of what was happening. As he moved slightly, An officer fired a single shot. Andrew Finch was killed instantly, right in front of his family. A $150 video game dispute had just ended a life. The incident sent shockwaves through the gaming world and forced public attention onto the very real consequences of swatting. Tyler Baresis was later sentenced to 20 years in prison. Casey Viner also received prison time, though a shorter sentence. One fake phone call, and a reminder that online rage doesn't stay online once the police get involved. The Wii Fit incident. On December 28, 2009, 25-year-old Tim Ease from Kent unwrapped a Nintendo Wii Fit, a Christmas gift that promised health, movement, and a little fun. Like a lot of people riding the post-holiday motivation wave, Tim couldn't wait to try it out. On Boxing Day, he powered up the console and dove straight into the fitness programs. According to his family, he didn't just sample it, he went all in. For hours, Tim worked through balance board challenges and aerobic minigames, pushing himself hard as the day went on. What was supposed to be light, gamified exercise turned into an intense workout marathon. That evening, after he finally stopped, something felt wrong. Tim complained of chest pain and difficulty breathing. His mother told him to lie down and rest, assuming he'd simply overdone it. But minutes later, he collapsed in the living room. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics arrived and attempted to resuscitate him, but it was too late. Tim was pronounced dead at the scene. An inquest later determined the cause of death to be a sudden cardiac arrhythmia, a fatal disruption of the heart's rhythm. Doctors noted that while cases like this are extremely rare, intense physical exertion can sometimes trigger deadly heart irregularities, even in young adults with no known conditions. The story spread quickly across the UK, reported as the first known death linked to Wii Fit-related activity, a fitness game, and a reminder that even safe things can turn serious when the body hits its limit. The Counter-Strike incident, on February 26, 2010, inside an internet cafe in Chongqing, China. Two men in their 20s were sitting side by side, playing Counter-Strike. At first, it was just another competitive match. Then the trash talk started. According to witnesses, the argument quickly escalated from in-game strategy to personal insults. Voices rose, chairs shifted. The shouting grew loud enough that people across the cafe began paying attention. Eventually, one of the men stood up and shoved the other. Staff rushed in and managed to separate them temporarily. But the fight wasn't over. It spilled out of the cafe and onto the street. That's when it crossed a line that couldn't be on. The aggressor returned with a knife and attacked the other man, stabbing him repeatedly in the chest and abdomen. Bystanders screamed and called for help, but the damage was already done. The victim collapsed on the pavement and died before paramedics could arrive. Police arrested the attacker shortly afterward. He admitted that he had lost control during the argument. What began as a video game dispute had ended as a homicide. The case was widely covered by Chinese media and quickly became another cautionary headline, an example of how internet cafe conflicts tied to online gaming were turning violent. Local authorities pointed to the incident as evidence of a growing problem, real-world rage, fueled by virtual battles, playing out in public spaces. No respawn, no rematch, just a game argument that turned fatal. The GTA incident, on August 3, 2008, in Bangkok, Thailand. An 18-year-old high school student named Paul Wino flagged down a taxi late at night. Everything looked routine until the ride ended. Instead of paying the fare, Wino pulled out a knife and attacked the driver, a 54-year-old man who never saw it coming. He stabbed the driver repeatedly, then dragged the body out of the vehicle and tried to drive off himself. The attempt didn't last long. Witnesses nearby immediately contacted police, who intercepted the stolen taxi within minutes. When questioned, Wino didn't deny what he'd done. He admitted that he'd been playing Grand Theft Auto and wanted to experience what it felt like to steal a car in real life. Investigators noted something unsettling. He wasn't intoxicated, and there were no signs of mental illness. What stood out was his fixation on the game. The teenager was charged with murder and robbery. He was later convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The response was swift. Thai authorities temporarily removed Grand Theft Auto from store shelves, pointing to the killing as proof of the game's dangerous influence. The story spread quickly beyond Thailand, becoming one of the earliest internationally reported cases of a homicide explicitly linked to video game inspiration. One game, one real car, and a line crossed that could never be The VR incident. On December 21st, 2017, a 44-year-old man in Moscow, Russia, was at home doing what VR was designed for: escaping reality. Wearing a virtual reality headset, he moved around his apartment fully immersed in the game, blind to what was actually in front of him. According to investigators, that disconnect turned deadly. While playing, he lost his footing and stumbled. Instead of hitting an empty wall or open space, he crashed straight into a glass table. The impact shattered it instantly. The broken glass cut deep into his body, inflicting severe injuries. Alone in the apartment and badly wounded, he was unable to call for help. Neighbors later reported hearing a loud crash but didn't investigate further. Hours passed. When family members eventually arrived, they found him lying on the living room floor, surrounded by shattered glass. He had bled to death from critical wounds to his head and neck. Moscow authorities confirmed the death and described it as one of the first known fatalities directly linked to the use of a virtual reality headset. The case quickly drew international attention, with headlines pointing out a risk few people had considered: that immersive games can become dangerous when played in environments that aren't. Turns out, the biggest threat wasn't in the game at all. It was the real world waiting just outside the headset. The World of Warcraft incident. On February 1st, 2007, a 26-year-old man walked into an internet cafe in Guangzhou, China, took a seat, logged into World of Warcraft, and disappeared into the game. No dramatic entrance, no rush, just a screen, a mouse, and time that slowly stopped mattering. People later said he barely interacted with anyone. He spoke little, if at all. He paused only for instant noodles and quick bathroom trips, then slid right back into the same chair. Day 1 passed. Then day 2. He stayed planted, eyes locked forward, hands moving almost mechanically. By the 3rd day, something was off. His reactions slowed. His posture sagged, but no one intervened. At around 10 a.m., he leaned forward and didn't come back up. His body slumped onto the desk. Other customers assumed he'd finally fallen asleep. It wasn't until several minutes passed with no movement that staff walked over to check. They shook his shoulder. Nothing. His body was limp. An ambulance was called immediately. When paramedics arrived, they found no pulse. At the hospital, doctors pronounced him dead. The cause: cardiac arrest triggered by extreme exhaustion and dehydration after 3 consecutive days of non-stop gaming. No raid boss, no final quest, just a character logged in and a life that quietly logged out. The Halo incident. On October 20th, 2007, in Wellington, Ohio, 16-year-old Daniel Petrick was at war with his parents, not over school or friends, but over a video game. His parents believed Daniel had become dangerously obsessed with Halo 3. To force a break, they confiscated the game and locked it inside a household safe. While they were away from home, Daniel discovered where the key was hidden. He opened the safe, retrieved the game, and then took something else: his father's pistol. When his parents returned, Daniel met them in the living room.com/controlled. He asked them to close their eyes, telling them he had a surprise for them. They trusted him. Instead, Daniel raised the gun and fired. His mother, Susan Petrick, was shot and killed instantly. His father, Mark, was shot in the head, but miraculously survived. As Mark lay bleeding, Daniel attempted to stage the scene, placing the gun in his father's hand in an effort to make it look like a murder-suicide. Emergency responders arrived quickly. Mark was rushed to the hospital and lived. Daniel was arrested at the scene without resistance. During questioning, he showed little emotion. Prosecutors later argued that Daniel believed he was living out a video game scenario, unable to separate consequence from fantasy. The defense claimed emotional immaturity and obsession, but the court was unconvinced. Daniel Petrick was convicted and sentenced to 23 years to life in prison. The case sent shockwaves across the United States, igniting fierce debate over violent video games, parental control, and how obsession, when unchecked, can turn catastrophic. The Pokemon Cliff. On September 7, 2016, along a rugged coastal path in Tokushima Prefecture, Japan, 2 young men set out with their eyes fixed not on the sea, but on their phones. Ages 21 and 22. They were playing Pokemon Go. the augmented reality game that had exploded worldwide just weeks earlier. The app encouraged players to move through real environments to capture virtual creatures, often drawing them into unfamiliar or hazardous locations. That afternoon, the pair walked side by side, phones raised, following the game's prompts. As they moved forward, the path gradually narrowed. Ahead lay a steep cliff overlooking the ocean, dropping more than 65 feet to the rocks below. Distracted by the screen, neither noticed how close they were to the edge. Moments later, both men fell. Nearby witnesses heard the screams and immediately called emergency services. Rescue teams arrived quickly. One of the men was found alive but critically injured and rushed to the hospital. The second was discovered motionless at the base of the cliff. He was pronounced dead shortly after arrival at the hospital. In the aftermath, Japanese authorities issued public warnings urging players to remain aware of their surroundings while using location-based games. The incident received widespread national and international media coverage and became another tragic example cited in discussions about the real-world dangers of digital distraction. The League of Legends incident. On November 14, 2012, a 23-year-old man walked into an internet cafe in Wuhan, China, took a seat at a computer, logged in to League of Legends, and began to play. Staff recognized him as a regular customer. He was known for long sessions, but this time was different. Hour after hour passed, and he never left his chair. Nearly 23 hours went by without any meaningful break. Other patrons later recalled seeing him shift uncomfortably, occasionally rubbing his chest. Despite visible signs of distress, he continued playing. As morning faded into afternoon, his condition worsened. At around 3 p.m., his body suddenly went slack. He slumped backward in his chair. His arms dropped to his sides. The mouse slipped from his hand. An attendant rushed over and called his name, but there was no response. Paramedics were summoned immediately. When they arrived, his pulse was weak and irregular. He was rushed to a nearby hospital, where doctors attempted emergency resuscitation. He was pronounced dead shortly afterward. Medical staff determined the cause of death to be cardiac arrest, brought on by extreme fatigue, dehydration, and prolonged immobility. The incident was widely reported in Chinese media and became one of several similar cases during that period, fueling renewed concern over marathon gaming sessions in public internet cafes. The Lineage 2 incident. On March 29, 2005, in Shanghai, China, two friends, Chu Changyi and Zhu Qi, were avid players of the online role-playing game Lineage 2. During their time playing together, Chu loaned Zhu a valuable virtual weapon known as the Dragon Saber, a powerful in-game sword that carried significant status and monetary value within the game's economy. Weeks later, Chu discovered that Zhu had sold the weapon for 7,200 yuan without his permission. Enraged, Chu demanded that the sword or its value be returned. Zhu refused. With no other recourse, Chu went to the police and reported the theft. However, at the time, Chinese law did not recognize virtual property as real property, and authorities declined to file charges. That legal dismissal only deepened the conflict. On the evening of March 29th, Chu confronted Zhu in person. What began as a heated argument quickly spiraled out of control. In a moment of rage, Chu pulled out a knife and stabbed Zhu repeatedly. Zhu died from his injuries at the scene. Chu was arrested immediately. In June 2005, he was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole. The case became one of the first high-profile homicides directly linked to a dispute over virtual property, igniting nationwide debate in China over the real-world value of digital assets and whether online items should be legally protected. The incident marked a turning point in discussions about virtual economies, how conflicts inside digital worlds can have irreversible consequences in the real one. The Pokemon train incident. On August 23, 2016, in Tokushima Prefecture, Japan, a 39-year-old truck driver was driving along a rural road while playing Pokemon Go on his phone. Distracted by the game, he failed to notice two women crossing at a railway intersection. The truck struck both pedestrians without slowing down. One woman, aged 72, was killed instantly. The second victim, a 60-year-old woman, was rushed to the hospital with critical injuries but died shortly afterward. Witnesses told police that the driver never braked before impacts. He was arrested at the scene and later admitted that he had been playing Pokemon Go while driving. Prosecutors charged him with dangerous driving, resulting in death. The case made national headlines across Japan, especially because the government had already issued public safety warnings about playing the game near roads and railways. In response to the growing number of incidents, Niantic, the game's developer, added stronger in-app warnings urging players not to use the app while operating vehicles. Despite those changes, the Tokushima crash remains one of the deadliest incidents ever linked to mobile gaming distraction, and a stark reminder of how quickly a moment of inattention can turn fatal. If you'd like to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and feel free to leave suggestions for the next video in the comments.